Hello, my name is Pia, and I'll be painting this still life in oils today using a limited palette. I will go over all the colors I use, my thoughts as I paint, the problems I encounter, and how I address them, as well as some changes I made along the way. And this video is for anyone who's interested in art, and no previous experience is required to follow along. So come join me, and let's see where this goes. For this painting, my colors will be a limited palette of ultramarine blue, burnt umber, alizarin crimson, yellow ochre, and I will allow myself to use cadmium yellow light and titanium white. Here I'm just going to ignore the cadmium red light. So that's my palette, and let's get started. So the first thing I need to do is to draw this still life accurately with my brush. So I'm measuring the height of the still life from the top of the Creuset to the bottom at the orange against the width, which is the side of the orange on the left to the eggs on the right. The ratio of the height versus the width is about 1 to 1.6. In other words, the width is just over 1.5 times the height of the still life. The other thing I really want to get right is the perspective of the square pan. And in this case, the sides of the pan must recede as they go back in space. And the easy way to figure that out is if you take a look at the bottom tip of the pan, that is the point of the pan where it's closest to me, the viewer. And so every line from that point must recede back in space. So you can see the opposite sides of the pan must recede as they go back or farther away from the viewer. So at this point, everything's been drawn in, so I'm going to start the actual painting, and I'm going to complete each element to about 70–80% completion, and then I'm going to move on to the next thing. This method is called window shading, and it's a good way to approach a still life because nothing is being created out of my imagination. It's all set up in the still life, and it's a good way to not waste too much paint as I move along. So when I'm painting the liquid parts of the egg, that's called the albumin, I'm trying to not think of it as liquid, and I'm just observing the light and the dark parts liquid, and I'm just trying to get it down faithfully on the canvas. One thing I do notice is that the liquid gets a little darker right when it butts up against the sides of the pan and where it sits underneath the yolk, so I'm definitely trying to get that down. And there's obviously that big cast shadow right along the bottom of the pan as well, so I also want to get that down. Now at this point I'm painting the oranges, and the orange is a mix of cadmium yellow light and alizarin crimson, and throughout this painting I really struggled to get a nice bright orange color. After I finished this painting, another artist recommended to me that I switch to cadmium yellow medium or cadmium yellow deep, which tends to lean a little bit more red, and that will give me a much brighter orange color. Cadmium yellow light tends to lean a little bit more green, which is why it's really hard to get bright oranges with it. Now you see the shadow that I'm painting in, the shadow between the rind of the fruit and the body of the fruit is a very bright crimson. That's pretty much pure alizarin crimson. The part of the fruit that you eat is translucent, which makes the shadows very rich. It's a phenomenon called subsurface scattering. Subsurface scattering is what makes the bright red color between your fingers when you hold your closed hand in front of a bright light. Now you see I also add the same rich color to the shadow in the central core of the fruit. When you take advantage of opportunities like subsurface scattering, you can add so much more life to your paintings. At this point, I'm adding a very dark, deep blue to the background around the oranges. That's part of the effort to make the oranges really pop out a bit more. If I can't make the oranges any brighter, then I can at least make the background extremely contrasting to the orange. Orange and blue are complementary colors, and a dark blue can make an orange color appear richer and lighter. One thing I want to point out, here on the peeled part of the skin, the white inside is very bright and textured. The white part is called the albedo, and it really helps the peel come forward in space. You can also see the albedo here in shadow. That's much darker and much softer, and that really helps it recede. Even though they're both albedo, the one in light is brighter and more prominent, and the one in shadow is very subtle. Now, when it comes to painting eggshells, the important thing is the values, the light and the darks, and the edges, hard and soft. Okay, I'm just going to use the values and the edges to just figure out, okay, this is the inside of the egg and that's the outside, and then I'm going to go back and worry about the details, the cracks, things like that later. But for now, it's just about the simple values and edges. At the red left side of the pan that's in shadow, I'm making that edge very soft, almost to the point of disappearing. This is known as lost and found edges, edges that at points just disappear and the viewer mentally fills in the gaps. This is a very powerful tool that engages your viewer and adds a lot of variety to your paintings. By contrast, you can see that the eggs are painted very clear and sharp. I'm adjusting the background behind the pan, trying to make it a little lighter. The top rim of the pan really isn't that important, so I'm lowering the contrast between the upper part of the pan and the background, which will make that edge recede further back in space. That helps make the foreground with the white eggs and oranges stand out even more against the dark blue background. So at this point, I'm filling in the background, and I realize I have way too much dead space at the bottom of the painting, and I really need to do something about it. I decided to add an extra orange to my still life. This will allow me to take up that big blank space at the bottom of the painting. And here's the finished painting. I hope this video was helpful and informative for you. Thank you for watching and following along. Let me know in the comments section if you have any questions, comments, or requests. Any constructive feedback is appreciated. Thanks again, and this is Pia signing off.